All right, KC7WSU, VK1JT. How about the audio level between the three of us? Are we all good? Bucky, at least between you and then the other two, John and the other one that just came through, that was also Chris. You guys all sound good, so hopefully it's not just me that. KV2IDX. KC7WSU's audio sounds a little bit low, but I got to check with you. Second party there. What do you think, Dr. Parrott? Well, you actually stumble upon the Dr. Parrott method with three different people hearing each other, and I balance him right with you. So you two guys sound good, and if you and I sound good to him, and then how do I and him sound to you would be the final pick. All right, we're good to go then. Let's get this three-ring circus started. We are going to take check-ins over the air, but you can also check in our chat room on ham.live. Ham.live, ham.live. We're taking check-ins there as well, and I'm going to pass it over to KV2IDX, and let's get going with Digital Learning Net. Go ahead and take it, KV2IDX from W0SUN. Okay, had to pause for a second there to make sure all the clocks stop making noise. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Learning Net. I'm Chris, KV2IDX. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana. Co-net control with Bucky, W0SUN. He is in Colorado, near Denver. And we meet here every Wednesday at 1900 hours Mountain Time, right here on Colorado HD XLX303D. And I believe it's also, the YSF is USRF 303. Bucky can correct me on that later. We like to discuss digital ham radio, answer questions, and listen to comments and experiences. So that's what we're here for, and we do it because we enjoy it. Now, as Bucky mentioned, we prefer to take the check-ins online at ham.live, but we will, in case there's any folks out there that can't get to a computer, don't want to get to a computer, we'll take them over the air too. But we do that just so we can spend more quality time talking about the good stuff. So if you are near a computer, go to, with any browser, to ham.live. Let me reset for the timer. And if you have a Gmail email address, just click on the Gmail button. And if you have a regular email, there's a box for that as well. Once you do that, just follow the prompts. Once you are you're in our main chat room, you're already checked in, and you will add to the numbers. So it's pretty cool that way. Okay, there's a couple of ways that you can monitor this net without amateur radio equipment. and one is the Brandmeister hose line. Link is in the chat room. It's hose.brandmeister.network, and you want to subscribe to Talk Group 31088. We also, Matt has generously provided us with a YouTube net page, which he has posted in there. If you want to stream tonight's net, that's at ks0owb.net. And there's a link there that you click on. Quick reset. Okay. Another great source for all of us for information is the Colorado Digital Net website. It's called the website. That's coloradodigital.net. And there's a lot of info there. They sponsor us. Colorado Digital does. And please feel free to make a donation if you wish to. It does take money to keep all this stuff up and running. Okay, that's coloradodigital.net. Just check it out. Do some scrolling. All right. So before we go any further, I will take a moment to ask if anyone has an announcement that would be of interest to the group. Please come now. This is KB2IDX and the Digital Learning Net. Okay, nothing heard. I think at this point I am going to turn it over to Bucky, who will run down who we have already in the chat room and take some over the air check-ins. And then we'll get on with the net. We have a pretty good show going tonight, so stick around. Bucky, it's all yours, sir. W0SUN and the net from KB2IDX. All right, thanks a lot, Chris. KB2IDX. This is W0SUN. This is the Digital Learning Net every Wednesday here on the Colorado Digital system. And you can check out information at coloradodigital.net, of course. And we got 33 check-ins so far. We're going to take some over there in just a second. Let me read who we've got in the chat room on ham.live. I got myself, KB2IDX, of course, KF0OTF, W1BKW, NT6DX, N0KU, N9DYO, KE9BJL, AC0XW, W5STC, K0GIO, KF0IGK, KE0TPW, DE4DBZ, W0KVZ, KF0OWB, AC1MT, KN4FM, KF0ORQ, K5RUN, WX4 Charlie, KC7WSU, VK1JT, ZL2, Bravo Echo Zulu, KC8GEF, W4KSK, W1TAT, KA1CNF, N5YAI, KC8I, KF0ODD, N3JAS, K2AS. And let me add WD0CIV. That takes us up to 34. Does anybody who doesn't have access to the internet or whatever and would like to get checked in over the air, so to speak, or through the magic of digital communications, please come down with your call sign and I'll get you added to the list. Looking for check-ins now. W0SUN. Go ahead.
KI5YNS,
Steve in Garden Ridge, Texas. All right. Yeah, I love it. Tonight we get most of our check-ins on the chat room, but I got Steve, KI5YNS. I got you added, and you're over there in Texas, actually Garden Ridge, Texas. Good to have you tonight. Good to have everybody tonight. Okay, we just added Eric, KU0SMR. He just came in, so we got 36 check-ins so far. All right, I am going to send it back over to Chris. Let's see. Any other items that I should be aware of? I know you have been tuning in and looking at some of the stuff going on in the digital stuff. But if you don't have anything, I got a couple of things. Over to you, Chris, KB2IDX from W0SUN. Well, actually, there is not much. Nothing major has happened new. Still gathering details on the new radio, so there's nothing new to report there. But no, it's back to you, sir. I have nothing else. I really wish I did, but it has not been the most exciting week. Back to you, AB2IDX. All right, all right. I do have something that I mentioned earlier over on the Digital Utah Net. They have a net every evening at 6:00 p.m. Mountain Time, and we go on at 7 p.m. And we'll talk more about that. But let me just mention something that came to my attention. Thank you, Lynn, KC8I, who was checked in tonight. Something that you want to be aware of. Not only starting today, I think today, Southwest Airlines, right? They're going to start charging for for they didn't used to charge for checked-in luggage. Now they're going to start charging for checked-in luggage. But beyond that, how is this related? Well, I'll tell you what. Starting today, also, Southwest Airlines, uh, in regards to lithium batteries, if you have spare batteries for your handy-talkies or whatever, and you check them in with your luggage, don't be surprised if your luggage is not going to make it on the plane. So starting today, anything with lithium batteries um, will have to be on carry-on. It has to be on carry-on, not checked in. So you have to go through security and make sure you don't pack them deep. Make sure you have them on top with your laptop, things like that, because they're going to want to inspect that, and definitely you're going to want to carry those on the plane. So lithium batteries with 100 watt hours or less in a device. Lithium metal batteries, lithium ion batteries, including power banks, cell phone battery charger cases, must be carried in the carry-on baggage only. So, and then if you are using them, they have to be in plain sight on the plane. So that's a new rule. It's been around a while, but they're actually making more official. So Southwest Airlines definitely. A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, something like that, a fire started on United Airlines. Luckily, it was on carry-on, but they had to quickly put that out. So all the flight attendants are being trained on how to deal with these batteries, and that's the new rule. All right, W0SUN, let me pause here just a second, and then we'll get started with tonight. I got a special guest here. Let me introduce before I time out. W0KVZ with one other announcement. All right, good deal. Vale, W0KVZ, please go ahead with your announcement. You always got good information. W0KVZ, please go ahead. Roger that, Bucky. Just wanted to mention that may not be up-to-date news, but the OpenSpot 4 SharkRF people have an upgrade firmware for the OpenSpot 4 starting tonight, and I believe you can do it manually anytime, but I did see that on their ledger for today. So you go to the app and you click on tools, and there's the update. Go ahead and manually update it. Thank you. All right. Oh, that's good to know. I've got an OpenSpot and having updates. I wonder if I better check for updates with the mic device as well. So I am hoping on the mic M1KE. I'm really hoping for a M17 link so I can start using M17 on the mic. Don't look for it soon on the OpenSpot though. They might get around to it, but I don't know how the technology would work because you need an AMBI type vocoder, which they have integrated with the OpenSpot, and I don't know how they might be able to maybe come up with the codec 2 type of vocoder. But yeah, uh, it's amazing what they've done what they've done. Hey, thanks for that. I'll be watching for that and see what I can see. So we'll report more on what that firmware update did. All right, thanks a lot. Any other quick announcements or anything? Please come on with any comments. This is VK1JT. I don't own any Yaesu Fusion equipment or like that. It's a little bit out of my price range, but I'm using DroidStar. And there's a couple of different versions out now for those who are interested. The latest releases on the pizza and beer site have also got the version with the built-in MV380 emulator, both for Windows, Linux, and also the Android. And I think you might be able to, I don't know if you can get it for iOS yet, but oh yes you can too, through TestFlight. So that's there, and the new vocoder is absolutely brilliant. It's been modified in that. And if you know how to compile source code, what you can do is off one of my GitHub sites, you can download the source code to my modified Indian version, which I cross-planted the vocoder out of Doug McLean's one into the Indian guide. The problem is I'm not a coder and I don't know how to make a statically linked executable package yet. I've been doing some research on Google. But once I've got that, I'll be able to release a binary. But at the moment, if you want to download the source code, you've got to install Qt, the development environment, and once you've done that, you'll be able to compile it up and run that and give that a go. This is Victor Kilowatt 1, Juicy Tomato, Canberra, Australia. All right, do you have
Give me I don't know if you mentioned a web page in there, but I didn't catch it, what you were saying. Do you have a location on the internet to download that? Is it on your QRZ, or do you have a link on it from there? Or go ahead and give me that information again.
No, sorry, it isn't. What I'll do is, it's on GitHub, GITHUB, Golf India Tango Hotel Uniform Bravo, and do a search for DroidStar-DMR. DroidStar-DMR. You'll see one that's by Troy Buxton, 67. That's the one that you want. There's also a JT 1971. That's the previous version of a slightly modified version of the Indian guy's one that turned into a desktop application. So if you wanted to run it on your Linux desktop or even Windows, all you got to do is install Qt, download it, and you can run the Indian version on your desktop. Back to you there, over.
Okay, I located it. I put it in the chat room. All right, good information. There's a lot of, I'm going to, in a future net, I did research on this one time, and there's 3 different places I'm aware of that you can get DroidStar, and they're each one a little tiny bit different. But some of them have the vocoders included. You can get it on the Google Play Store, so you can even get one on for Apple iOS. If you go to Pizza and Beer, and we can locate that. We'll put that in the chat room. Maybe we'll announce the actual webpage here in just a bit. All right. Thanks a lot for that, John. Good to have you on, VK1JT. All right, stand by. Okay, let me see if I can do this and type at the same time. Anyway, I got a friend, Chris, from Lehi, Utah, just south of Salt Lake, KC7WSU. And he's part of UtahDRN.org. And if you go to that site, it's basically a placeholder for good things to come. But they're working on several things. One of the things they're working on is they are combining DMR, P25, NXDN, YSF, D-Star Fusion for and we do a digital Utah net every, every Wednesday at 6 p.m., just right before this net, actually. And I take part in that every Wednesday. I try to anyway. And not only are they doing that, but they're also doing a lot of work in the P25 area. So, Chris gave a really killer presentation at a conference that I attended last February of this year, at the very beginning of the year. And that was an outstanding project or presentation and an ongoing project. Let's just go ahead and send it over to Chris, KC7WSU, and I'll just let you go ahead and take the mic, and then I'll come up with some questions here in just a little bit, and start asking away. So go ahead, Chris, KC7WSU. Let me know what you got going. And by the way, Chris, KB2IDX, and myself, we met up with Chris, KC7WSU, at Dayton Hamvention. That was fun too. Go ahead over to Chris from W0SUN.
Hey, thanks, Bill. Thanks for the initial shout out. Yeah, my name's Chris, KC7WSU. I am one of the managing directors for Utah DRN. We have a number of us that work on kind of our goal is to find cool projects. So that's what we've been working on. We started with the multi-mode reflector. Then about a year ago, we learned about something called the DVS project. I am going to throw a link here in the chat for anybody that's interested in it. But basically, we'll talk about it, is the DVM project is the ability to basically create a phase 1 P25 trunked radio system. So kind of a cool thing right now where you can have a full-on trunk system. This is like the idea behind it is a first responder type system, but things open source, and you can do a lot of different things with it. Let me just second set. So for us, kind of the cool thing with it is that of us that are part of Utah DRN are all involved with public safety. Almost everybody on our board is affiliated with public safety in one way or another. We either volunteer with a communications team. We work with the emergency operations centers. We work with the State Department of Emergency Management. So there's a number of different things, but almost all of us are involved with basically with first responders. The cool thing, at least in Utah, is that the first responders are using P25 radios, and for us, so they only use 700 and 800 megahertz and then VHF. That leaves the whole UHF band open for us to start playing with and implementing P25. Kind of the idea behind is that we'll implement P25 and interoperability between different departments. One of our biggest sponsors is the operations planner for the Department of Emergency Management within the State Department of Public Safety. So that's kind of our goal right now is the interoperability, and P25 is listed with the caveat that basically all public safety has to have it. It's a cool setup right now. Let me reset. So the thing that for us has been really nice is we're looking at spectrum efficiency. For anybody that understands a trunk-based system, right? It goes as kind of a first in, first out. So to have somebody that requests a channel or a talk path, right? It gives them the first available talk path. If there's somebody else, they get the second one and the third one. So we do a first in, first out versus a conventional, hey, I have a repeater, it never gets used, right? Whereas our thought process is if we had four channels, we could easily host 10 to 20 different talk paths because most of those people aren't talking all at the same time or need the repeaters at the same time. As I'm sure in Colorado, just like in Utah, a lot of our repeaters sit quiet all but maybe one day or one night a week. And so more spectrum usage is an awesome thing for us. And that's kind of our goal, is to make it so that more spectrum can be used and that we're not just wasting a bunch of it on just having somebody saying they have a repeater just to have a reader. So those are kind of some of the goals for us, has really been interoperability and then better use all the channels and the spectrum that we have availability for us. And it's been fun too. It's kind of a project. So I think that's at least a pretty good intro. What questions you got for me there, Bill?
All right, I'm going to start kind of with, let's say if we wanted to get started in P25 communications. One way we can do that, can we, let's just start, let's say I have a fusion radio or a DMR radio. Can I do a cross mode with my hotspot? And let's just start there. If I want to just experiment with P25, what is the best way to get started? Just let's start there and then go from there with if I want to, how do I obtain a P25 radio? Let's just start there and then we'll go and talk about phase 1 and phase 2.
All right. Yeah, so I hotspot first, right? So for us, right now, if you have P20 video, you can use a hotspot, so that's always an option. Hotspots have reflectors that work exactly as the YSF reflector for anybody that's used those, and pretty much about 80% of the way to like how a D-Star reflector works. So yes, you can do that. And the bonus on our side is that because we already have P25 reflectors that are to DMR and D-Star and Fusion and NXDN and everything else, then you back over into those. So that makes it nice that even if you have a P25 radio and you want it, not everybody around you has to have it. We can use these multi-mode bridges to come in one and then go out the other. The other works, phase 1, phase 2, as far as I understand, at least its open source implementation will never go phase 2. Pretty much phase 2 is really only there for public safety. Ham radio is never going to need phase 2. It's just not, we don't really get that nitty gritty into it and basically go and say, okay, we need a TDMA and we need twice the channels or anything like that. We really, FTMA is pretty much at this point as far as it'll ever go. If you guys want to dig into P25 phase 1 versus phase 2, it might be worth the reach for if you're interested. The one thing to know is the difference between phase 1 and phase 2 is about $25,000 per repeater. And if you figure the site needs four repeaters, right, that's a pretty stark difference between having a site that's about $3,000 to $5,000 versus one that's between $100,000 and $100,000. So yeah, pretty big difference that you normally phase 2 is not needed.
All right. So that's good to remember. So if you want to get into P25, we talked a little bit about this. P25, from a P25 user's standpoint, you know, we talked about from ham radio, we're very interested that P25 uses actual C4FM communications. So I thought that was interesting, and that's got to be, you know, I understand that Vertex worked on that as well in the very beginning. Vertex was at that time the parent company, or was part of the company of Yaesu, and now Yaesu has a C4FM as well. And I also know that if you have a P25 phase 1 radio, even though it does C4FM, it's not compatible with a C4FM Yaesu radio. It's because it's a little bit different vocoding, even though they're still doing C4FM. Let me just right there get your take on it. We're going to go delve a little bit deeper here in just a second, but phase 1, from that ham radio viewpoint, I was very interested in that. So any comments on that?
Yeah, you bet. So the one thing that confuses a lot of people, and this is good that you brought this up, is when people talk about System Fusion uses C4FM, but so does a lot of things. So NXDN uses C4FM. P25 uses C4FM. So there's a lot of different people that use C4FM. It's not just, it's not actually C4FM is one of the types of, but it's not. So like you'll see in this one, it's a continuous 4-level frequency module, and it's a special type of 4FSK. right? And then like D-Star uses MSK, and then you have different ones like DMR uses their own standard, P25 uses their own standard, but they do use um, a type of modulation. But yeah, C4FM is nothing to Fusion. It's used by a ton of different things. Really, the way to look at Fusion is it's a FSK, um, as opposed to C4FM, just because C4FM means a lot of different things. C4FM basically just means it's a variation of FDMA. So, and then you have CPQSA or whatever, which is a variation uh, of TDMA. So there's a lot of different things at play there. I did notice in the comments there's somebody saying, yes, what type of is there that's phase one? The great thing is almost all the phase two equipment. So just people that make phase one equipment, right? We're talking about ICOM, we're talking about Kenwood, we're talking about Bendix King, we're talking Standard Vertex, Motorola, Tate. Like there's a ton. So there really is a lot of phase one equipment out there. There's phase two, Harris, um, and lots of phase one out there, but there's also phase two out there too. So lots of different systems. Another question in there. How would the use of a trunk system impact frequency coordination? That's a good question. So our thought process for a lot of this too is working closely with our frequency coordinator to coordinate frequency pairs. Like for us, we're thinking about, hopefully I'm back now. There's a lot of different things with frequency coordination that to go on, right? For us, we need to work closely with the coordinator, make sure that on board with it, make sure that we can get the frequency pairs we need, and then be able to make it a usable system. If we can convince in most places, if we can convince some of these groups to use like a phase one trunk system over using just having a repeater, just having it sitting there all the time, we can reuse a lot of frequencies and hopefully pick some of those up. It's not going to be an easy road for us, but we know that we build enough repeaters to know the frequency coordinator that we should be able to work through this. I think that's a bunch so far. What's we got, Bucky?
Okay, this is great. So we're going to get into trunk system in just a minute, but I'm kind of setting what we know with ham radio and then comparing it to P25. And we know a lot about DMR. We don't know a lot about P25. So right now, we do know, based on what we're showing here, we do know that C4FM is using what we call FDMA. So get this right now in your heads, folks. FDMA versus TDMA. Fusion is FDMA, all right? D-Star is also FDMA. That is frequency division multiple access. DMR is time division. That's why we have time slot 1, time slot 2, right? Okay, so get this in our heads. FDMA versus TDMA. Now that becomes really important when you're talking about P25 phase 1 and phase 2. So really quick, if you could, Chris, can you compare what we know about DMR and kind of compare it with P25, especially where did DMR come from? Where did that come from the public sector? Who uses DMR today besides ham radio? Who out there uses DMR? And who out there uses P25? And then from there, compare DMR to P25, and then we'll go from there. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, generally, DMR is what we call an operations critical radio system, right? So it can be critical for operations. You see that places like amusement parks, airports, things like that. You see DMR used all over the place. Dominantly, what we consider a business radio system, but it's always been designed. So 25 is a U.S. public safety standard. It is not a worldwide public safety standard. Most people, public safety outside the U.S., use something called TETRA, which is that's another discussion to go into, which is a 4 time slot TDMA system running in a 25K channel, 6.25 effective. But the only ones that use P25, and so you see it all over the place. And to somebody's question there, right, can you get new phase 1 equipment? You definitely can. You can get brand new. You can get used. You can get it all over the place. There's kind of everything in between, right? Even like saw somebody, they just bought a quad band. It's a VHF, UHF 7 and 800 meg Leo, and it was like $400 used, right? Quad band, it'll do all of them. It does P5 phase 1, it does phase 2, tons of different stuff. So lots of different options out there. But yeah, it is unfortunately there's many radios out there because of the fact that the P25 is a U.S. standard, not a worldwide standard. Back to you, Becky.
Okay, so earlier I talked about C4FM versus DMR and time slot 1, time slot 2. I noticed when outside of the ham radio world, we don't really talk about P25 using time slot 1, time slot 2. We talk about more in the, you hear this a lot in the P25. So P25 phase 1, they don't really talk about phase 1 and phase 2. We do that on ham radio, but in the P25 world, they talk about, they do mention FDMA upgrading to TDMA, and they do mention you get more channels. So talk about, without talking about trunking, we're going to go into trunking in just a little bit, but going from the earlier FDMA to the newer TDMA, what is the terminology? And Chris, he actually works in with the Utah County Sheriff's Department, I think it is. I'm not sure, but Utah County, and you help them with their radios and things like that. So you are very familiar with this terminology and using it in Utah County, which is south of Salt Lake. But so let's talk about it from a non-ham radio viewpoint in the commercial world, going from less channels to more channels, FDMA to TDMA. What is terminology and how do they see it? Back over to you.
So I guess FDMA it's good to talk about. I would say the main thing though is that TDMA is really only reserved for public safety. It just doesn't sense anywhere else, right? Like I'd mentioned her, this idea that if I want to go from a TDMA to an FDMA, or if I want to go from FDMA to TDMA and go from, if I have, right, 4 repeaters and they're FDMA right now, and I go to TDMA, now I have 8, right? Well, normally it's actually 6 channels and you keep the 1 control channel. You have all of those available to you. However, the cost is cost prohibitive. It's just not something that somebody's going to do. Nobody's going to say, hey, I know I've got FDMA and that's costing me $5,000 to get 4 channels, and I'm going to spend $125,000 to get more. It just doesn't make sense. Like, nobody's spending money. And like this project, especially with P25, the whole point of money. Like with a Motorola, if you have even a phase 1 system on just your back end core system is millions of dollars. So even that, right, it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of the whole point of this is you can do things really cheap. You can use old things that have already been done, right? Like we're using MM boards, right? We flash them with a different firmware, and then you run them straight P25 and different things like that. So it's really it's basically making P25 accessible to people that could not pay and purchase the infrastructure, and people that could not spend $150,000 or $125,000 for a single site. They can say, hey, we're going to do this for a couple $1,000. We're going to get this site. It's going to be perfect. It'll do what we need. And it's ham radio critical, right? And it's something to do and something to play with and something to experience at a great cost. So I think that's more along the lines like TDMA is great. It's just never at that extra cost.
Okay, so going from my experience when I first started getting into, now in the early days, who didn't have a scanner? We went from in the 60s or 70s, crystal controlled scanners with Radio Shack, and then we got other scanners, and then we got digital scanners. I used to listen to Denver Police with all their digital, I invested into a digital scanner, and then I was going to on the internet and looking at frequencies that I could monitor. And pretty soon I started losing the Denver Police, and I couldn't hear agencies. I couldn't hear Douglas County. I couldn't hear Arapahoe County Police anymore, because when I looked at those frequencies, they were going P25. All of them. I mean, it was so popular. They were going P25 phase 1, P25 phase 2. Now, let's say I'm a sheriff's company in a suburb of Denver, and everybody's going P25. What was it that was driving P25? Is it that they could communicate with other agencies, right? After 9/11, for example, everybody wants to talk with other agencies and have compatible radio. So when you show up at an intra-agency, it's really great to have P25. So I'm with the sheriff's office, and we decide to use those tax dollars and get a P25 system. And we're early adopter. We finally get into P25 phase 1. And now, you got everybody going to P25 phase 2, and we just went to P25 phase 1, and now we spent all that money. How are we going to communicate with people with P25, TDMA when we have FDMA? So, is it backwards compatible? Can P25 TDMA talk to FDMA? Can those more channels talk to systems with less channels? Back over to you.
Yeah, so some great points. I would say that the first thing to know is that, for example, if you're a share office or you're a department of some sort, most of the time your buying is part taxpayer dollars for your city, and then normally also grants. The number of law enforcement agencies that file for grants every year have, like, if they want to buy a grant and say, here's what we are, here's the department, we'd like a $200,000 to buy some new radio. Normally those are federal grants, and when they're being a federal grant, the government after 9/11 basically had said, if you want federal funds, those federal funds need to be radios that are what we call P25 capable. They don't need to have them turned on. These are software-defined radios, so you can purchase the radio, use it analog, and then when everybody else goes P25, you can upgrade it for phase 2. And so most of those radios will do phase 2 if they've been made in the last 15 to 20 years. It's normally just the ones before that. So that's part of it too, is if you want funding, you got to buy a P25 compatible radio, even if you only are going to use it for analog. P25 is required. That's how the funding comes through. So that's a big part of it. And then the other part of it is, yes, there's a lot of interoperability channels that are actually defined as P25 only. So in the 800 megahertz band, they're analog. In the 700 megahertz band, they're all straight P25. So if you wanted to talk to somebody on a 100 megahertz interoperability channel, you have to have it that has to be P25 phase 1 capable. And interoperability is only using phase 1. They'll never use phase 2 because phase 2 has to be going through a large system. So they'll always be phase 1. So that's kind of what you're seeing these days is people are using phase 1. They bought a radio and it supports phase 2 and they're going to phase 2. We're in that phase right now where we have a ton of radios that are phase 1 and we're probably going to go to phase 2 in about 5 years. Let me reset. When we do go to phase 2, a lot of times you can just upgrade the radio. You can go to Motorola and say, hey, I need to upgrade this radio, pay a fee, and now that radio is phase 2 capable and can start doing phase 2. For the newer systems, if you have a phase 2 radio, and say for example, Utah County, the phase 2, but Salt Lake is not yet. When people are talking in Utah County, they can all be on 2. And then in Salt Lake County, they can stay on phase 1. So you can have individual sites. Well, if the person coming in is on phase 1, it'll downgrade everybody to phase 1. If everybody's 2, it'll bring everybody up to phase 2 and start doing it. So there's a lot to it. But most of these radios are all capable. They can do it. They can make those changes. Yeah, it does cost money, but normally they're going to get another grant to turn on phase 2. So that's what a lot of them would be doing. Over to you, Bill.
All right. So I understand if I'm out there and you've got multiple channels, more channels with phase 2, but you can actually, if somebody, if you need to transmit with phase 1 radio, it is backwards compatible. It actually, it doesn't really, it actually adjusts back to a phase 1 mode if it needs to, and then you can go back to phase 2. So that's really cool. Now, now I understand. So agencies are required to buy phase 2 radios, and they're getting rid of all their phase 1 radios. So that's perfect for ham radio. So now we can pick up those radios for a lot cheaper, and compare the price with a phase 1 and a phase 2. How much is a phase 2 radio versus how much is a phase 1 radio? And where's the best place to buy a phase 1 radio? How do you acquire how do you acquire a phase 1 radio? If you want to get into P25. And this is becoming really popular in ham radio. I think it's actually, you talk about people getting M17 radios. How many companies actually make the M17 radios versus how many companies are making P25 radios? And you can obtain P25 radios from different manufacturers, even EF Johnson, Motorola, other companies. When I was at Hamvention, man, I was seeing all kinds of P25 radios made from other companies, some companies I never even heard of. So that was pretty amazing. So how much is a typical phase 1 radio compared to a phase 2 radio?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I would say that is probably the loaded question out there, which is how much does one cost, right? And I say that because I've purchased phase 1 radios for $30, right? And I've purchased phase 1 radios for, I don't know, $300-400. But I've also purchased phase 2 radios for $4,000, right? So it's all kind of in between. I'm a little different scenario, right? Because I'm on a phase 2 trunk system, and so with the state of Utah, so I'm in a little different boat than some people. So for me, I need a phase 2 radio. But I did actually not too long ago for about 350 picked up, like $350 each. I picked up 2 phase 2 radios, right? Nothing special, not a lot of bells and whistles, but they did actually phase 2, phase 1, um, Bluetooth, a bunch of kind of cool stuff. So kind of neat radios. So it's really a matter of what can you find and who's getting rid of something. Some people might think that it's junk, and somebody else uh, might think that they're worth a lot of money. Like I just saw one the other day. Somebody wanted $15 for a radio that I think is worth about $300. That's their choice, right? So it's a matter of looking, kind of knowing what you're looking for, and then figure out kind of what can you afford or what are you looking to buy. Just a second. Let me reset. I would say the other thing that's interesting about is, at least for us, right, as we kind of move down this, we're implementing more trunking. I know as a group, we're going to look at buying more radios. And as we find radios, because a lot of us have a lot of experience buying these radios, as we're buying a lot more of them, we'll buy them up, make sure they're good to go, make sure they have everything they need, and then we'll be bringing them, right, um, for pretty much the exact same thing we paid for. So that's kind of our goal too, is as we know people are looking for radios, is to start around. Even I was out at Dayton Hamvention, right, and I picked up like 6 or 7 new radios for my local police department. Okay, we got them a deal on some radios. They're working great. I'm looking for one for Bucky who wants a radio. I think I found him a good one for about $400. So lots on the horizon, but I would say if you don't know the P25 and you don't need it for yet, it can be very expensive. So I would highly recommend it. If you don't know anybody, you feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help and to help you understand what might be needed, kind of what your budget looks like, and kind of radios might be within that budget. Over to you, Bucky.
Yeah, that Chris and I were with you that day. You found that deal with all those radios. I was actually following you and shadowing you, and you were hard to keep up with, man. I was trying to keep up with you, and you were cruising, and you got that deal and talked that guy down to a really good price with all those radios. That was really cool to watch you at Hamvention. Um, all right, so. Um, anyway, let's take a break. Um, and I'm going to get caught up with how many check-ins we have, take a breather, and then I'm going to come back and ask you to talk about what you're doing with P25 ham radio trunking system in Utah, especially in the Salt Lake area, in that area. I do have a couple of your slides from your presentation that you gave back in February. And so let's go there. So take a breather. Let me just see how many check-ins we have. So stand by. KC7WSU. This is Bucky W0SUN with the Digital Learning Net. Stand by. All right, we left off with KI5YNS there, Steve, and we added, this is great, Dan, AE0TX, KD9YOO, WA5RAG, KN6WES, W9DJM, W0AFR, KA5JKI, W1VAN, WD0HDR, KI7NTK, and KF0LPT. All right, that brought us up to 46. And we'll take some over-the-air check-ins here towards the end. We're at the top of the hour. You're listening to Digital Learning Net, and we're here every Wednesday night, starting at 7 o'clock Mountain Time. And all right, man, it's great to see everybody on. I love having you guys check in, and I see a lot of regulars here. So stand by. All right. So I'm going to upload a couple of those slides, and let's talk about how you go from a conventional system to a trunk system and how you're doing that. Talk a little bit about that, and I'll start uploading those slides that I got from your presentation. Back over to KC7WSU. That's Chris in Utah, and he's our guest tonight, and I really thank him for coming on and helping us understand a little bit more about P25. All right, back over to KC7WSU from W0SUN.
Bill? Yeah, I would say the biggest is if we think about it in there's a slide in my presentation. I'm sure Bill will put the whole presentation up when we're done for anybody that is interested. Like say for example, right, you go to a bank, and for anybody that's gone to a bank recently, you need to have a teller. Let's say there's 4 tellers up there. Okay, there's ways that you could do it, right? You could have, if you had 4 lined up, you could have one person behind each teller. If a person's available, they can go, right? And then so in that scenario, lines go faster than other lines. Or in another scenario, right, you have a single line. As one opens up, it fills in that slot. So they'll go to teller 2, and they'll go to teller, and then go to teller 4, and then teller 3, or whatever. And it's the same idea with the trunk system. In the first scenario, right, it's like you had 4 different frequencies, and you had to wait till that frequency was on. And in the trunk world, right, as soon as frequency 3 is available, the system can automatically push somebody into that frequency and let them use it and talk. And as soon as they becomes available. So it just allows us to have a better frequency out and more utilization for that. And for us, that thing is just how do we better utilize this, and how do we And also, how do we not a large spectrum of frequencies and make them unusable for maybe somebody else that might want to try, experiment, and do some other cool projects too.
All right, real good. So I put the slides in. I'll go ahead and see if I can put that presentation in somehow. We'll get that. But so I have slides. We're looking at conventional versus trunking operation from your slides there. Back over to you.
Yeah, it was just, the other thing that's really neat, at least too, with the trunk-based system, right, is that for anybody that's familiar with a traditional trunking system, you have a control channel. Control channel tells all the radios on the network where to go, what to do, which talk group to talk, frequency to talk on. All of that data is stored within the control channel. And then the neat part too is it's also like the old cell phones, right? Where you can put, if for example you use 7 control channels or 6 control channels throughout the entire state, you just use different ones, right? Like you don't use the same one in one county as the neighboring county, right? So that you don't have kind of this frequency overlapping. And if you don't use those same, reuse them, you can use just a couple and cover the entire state and use that. And the cool part with that too is your radio will automatically scan and find the best site. So like if you're in a certain place that doesn't have as good a coverage as somewhere else, as long as your sites overlap coverage, it'll automatically roam to neighboring sites and then pick up that same talk group, keep the conversation going. Very similar to like DMR roaming, but the roaming is controlled by the back end, not by the actual user subscriber. It is to a certain degree because it's looking at signal strength, but then it roams around based on frequency, not necessarily based on preset configuration that's in the radio. So very cool, and that's like why it's great for a first responder, right? A firefighter or police officer doesn't have to know where all the local repeaters are. They just have to know that it's programmed, ready to go. And they pick it up and they can just start talking on it. And that's kind of an idea that we would be doing with P25 is somebody could come to us, we could program the radio up, get in, and then away they go. The only thing they would need to add is if they wanted a different talk group one day, wanted to talk on, right, like this, they want to talk on Colorado HD versus talking on Colorado statewide or 314900 or whatever it may be. Yeah, then your programming becomes simplified. It's at least from a system standpoint, it's more work for people on the back end, like self-building some of these, but easier for the user. Let me reset. The other thing that's been kind of fun is working with one of the somebody that I work with. We're working on building transmitter and receive combiners. Right, because now we're at multiple repeaters, like 4 repeaters at a site, we can't realistically put up like 4 duplexers and have 4 antennas on these towers, right? So we're working on combiners where you can basically combine all of the transmit frequencies into one antenna, combine all the receive frequencies into another. So now you go down to 2 antennas versus 4 antennas. So that includes a bunch of RF gear that would do all of that, different keys or different isolators or like a 90-degree splitter, thing that kind of do all this work for us. So there's some cool tech and some other thing into it and some real like RF engineering that's been kind of fun. And so we're working on a small portable box that we can show and demo. We have some small boxes that are already working in our houses. We're working on some that are bigger that we can demo and take places. Hopefully soon we can install our first like real site at a mountaintop site, at least here Over to you, Bill.
All right, real good. So I'm looking at these slides and I'm seeing, let's say, you got a situation where you see these two fire trucks and they're talking on channel 1 on a conventional system. Then you have those other responders come in, EMS, whatever, and they jump on and they have to go to channel 2. Now, is this one repeater or does it matter, I guess? And then if somebody else wants to come in, they have to go to a channel 3. So you have to actually switch. But if you go with a trunking operation and those same two fire engines, whatever, those two fire trucks, they're using the same channel, they're talking. Then you have on trunking system, you have a control channel. So those guys just get on, they don't care, they get on the control channel and it already jumps them to a free channel. They don't have to worry about it. So they just want to go to channel B and it it jumps and finds the right channel. So everybody that needs to go on that channel, they automatically switch to that channel. They don't have to choose that channel. They don't have to worry about it. They just want to go to that talk group or whatever, or that system. And so that's the advantage of a trunking system. So that's kind of cool. Maybe can you fill in the holes there or fill in the gaps what I'm talking about? I'm trying to understand this a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that about sums it up, Bill. The it's basically it's a you can call it right first in first out. So as it's available, you have multiple channels. However many channels you have, it could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20. Whatever's available, right? It does those first, and so it allocates based on that. Right? It'd be the same idea that like in a fire department, right? Like in Utah County, not every fire department could have their own chant and for their own frequency. They couldn't have their own, like every city, every police, law enforcement, everything. Like as they would do this, man, we would just run out of frequencies so fast. So because of that, right, we have to. That's at least why trunking systems are available. So we're doing the same thing. But yeah, it's a first in, first out. As that becomes available, it assigns you there, and yeah, and away you go.
Okay, so with phase 2 radios, you get more channels in the same bandwidth. That's the advantage. So you get, instead of 3 channels, or you get 6 channels to work with. And that's the way they think. They don't really understand that it's FDMA, TDMA, whatever. That's how they get so they're splitting the bandwidth and adding more channels. That's the beauty of it. That's why everybody's upgrading. So the old way, 3 channels. The new way, wow, then you get 6 channels on a trunk system. So you still have a control channel with phase 1, but only 3 channels. But phase 2, you got the control channel, and then you have 6 channels or whatever. Now, I think I understand that. Now, with ham radio, with what you're building, you only have phase 1, but you're building a trunk system, and you got that control channel. Let's talk about how you're doing this with ham radio, and then we'll just open it up for any questions, and then we'll go from there. So let's talk about how you're building that in regards to ham radio, what frequencies you're using, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so yeah, you got it. The two, we basically just double all of our frequencies. So for us, we're building out on UHF, right? By far, there's more spectrum there. There's more repeater pairs available. So yeah, we just decided uh, UHF is the best spot for us, and that's kind of where we're at right now. We are running hotspots right now that have control channel and a phase one voice channel, so we've already got all of those going. That's kind of working out. And like I said, we've got the hotspots. We're going to go to our rack-mounted demo unit, and we'll move from there to an actual site installed at a repeater site and running. And then, like right now, we have a core that's running back to a data center, and that's from all linking into, and then all of the linking happens from there. So I think that's about it. I'm sure there'll be some questions. And, I'm happy to come another night too, if that helps some people. Even give you some time to digest and think about it, and come another time too. So over to you, Becky.
All right, real good. So, you've got a reflector on P25. So, if anybody wants to get on P25, they can go to the P25 Utah reflector. And I earlier included a list of reflectors that are available through a hotspot. So if you have a UHF radio, that's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get a UHF P25 radio. What that's going to buy me, and I go to Utah a lot because I used to live over in Utah, and my kids, I raised them over in Utah, then I moved back to my hometown in Colorado. So I travel to Utah quite a bit. So when I travel over there, I want to have a P25 radio so I can use their repeater system, which is really cool. But when I come home, I can use it on my hotspot. So that's what I'm doing, and thank you for helping me obtain a really cool P25 radio. We'll talk about that later. So when I go over to Utah and I get on the repeater today, am I going to that reflector? And tomorrow, or let's say a year from now, or 6 months from now, what can I do? And where can I go and talk? And how's that going to work? So I'm a ham radio operator. I get this really cool P25 radio. How do I use it? Don't tell me specifically how to use it, but generally, what can I do with it when I go and hit that repeater or a series of repeaters? And where are they going to be located?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, right, there's a number of ways you can do it. There's hotspots, right? So that's one way to do it, which is kind of a cool thing. Is anything else with DMR, D-Star, whatever, they have hotspots. You could use a conventional repeater, right? We have a number of MMDVM conventional repeaters here, so you could use one of those too. Um, and then for us, hopefully, then there will be trunked repeater systems. It'll be larger, wide area systems, and so hopefully those will all be available. And then the cool thing for us is we're going to run. We do have with our trunk is some of these radios, the Motorola's, some of the newer ones have something called Smart Connect. And the cool thing with that is if you go outside the range of a system, like you go outside the range of one of our sites, they'll be able to flip over to Wi-Fi, and then from Wi-Fi to something called Smart Connect, and that would connect back into our core here in Utah and connect you back into the system and kind of keep you running. So that's an option too. Is that hopefully you'll be able to, if you're outside the range, right, you could still use that radio, you could still talk. And even for you, Buck, you say you had it set up for the Utah system, and you went back to Colorado. Um, if you had Wi-Fi at your house or on a hotspot or something, you could talk back into the system still, and it would run radio over IP. So that's kind of our make it so there's multiple approaches to still get in and talk on P25.
Yeah, I think this is amazing. This is really cool. And it makes me, that's what made me want to get into P25. All right. Let me open it up for any comments or any questions. Any comments or questions? If you're dealing with, let's say, are you? I want to know anybody that is using P25 and how you're using it, and which reflector you like to go to. I noticed that I just looked up the Utah reflectors, and you're tying P25 reflectors into the. You have a system out there that utilizes a number of means to get on the, you have an XLX reflector, you have YSF reflectors out there, and you're building this system, including the P25 reflectors, and you have it tied into AMCOM as well. I think that's really cool. So the AMCOM DMR network, you can get on and put in these talk groups, put in these reflector numbers if you have a P25 radio. So it's a pretty neat system, and I'm really excited to start using it. So I'm going to open it up for any questions or comments. If you're also using P25, come on now with your call sign. Thank you, KC7WSU, and let's open it up to W0SUN for any questions or comments regarding P25 only at this point.
Yeah, Zulu Lima 2 Bravo Echo. Zulu would like to make a comment.
I tell you, man, you're a mind reader because I love it when Paul comes on. He's also in this industry, and I was thinking about calling on you. Go ahead, Paul, in New Zealand. Go ahead and let's hear what you have to say.
Yeah, Roger, Bucky. Yeah, I've got a comment regarding the purchase of surplus equipment. What I've found is in the P25 industry that if you have a radio and you do not have a license for trunking, it won't do trunking. So some particular user groups will just use one conventional repeater, or a phase one repeater, and you without the need for trunking. And that can always be a bit of a worry as far as purchasing surplus equipment goes, because if it hasn't got the appropriate license for trunking, then you're out of luck as far as the trunking network goes. So maybe the other caller would like to comment on that. Over.
Yeah, Paul, that's a great comment. Yeah, we do run into that, and that happens a lot with some of these radios. Sometimes where we kind of are, at least at this moment, we're helping people with that. We do have the software to enable a lot of those features, and so that is something that can be enabled um, on an amateur radio like P25 unit they're using for amateur service. So yeah, that is something that to be wary of, because it could be very costly if you don't know how much it is going to take, or kind of what what that radio is capable of today or what it could be capable of in the future with the right software. So yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, roger that. Yes. There's always a little bit of a caution as far as purchasing surplus equipment as to what capabilities it's got, and it's all good stuff. Yeah, we're in New Zealand. We've gone from phase one. We're going to phase two, so that requires a lot of equipment replacement, as we all know. And there'll be a bit of surplus P25 equipment in New Zealand, I think, in due course. Over. Back to you, Becky.
All right, real good. So, any that brings me to a question with Chris. What should I be careful of when I get a P25 radio? Let's say I get a really good deal for $30. What features should I be worried about? If I just want to get on a hotspot and do I need all these extra features? I know nothing about P25 radios, and let's say I just want to have one to get on, and maybe if there's a P25 repeater later on, what should I be careful of? Anything like that? Over to Chris.
So most of these radios, like I mentioned, are software defined. So some of them just may not have the features. And normally a lives is out of the box, a brand new radio, like for example, um, it'll support analog, and that's works. And everything on top of analog, anything besides that, would be a cost. So the previous person who had it, like if they were using on their phase 2 system, it may have all those features already purchased and enabled. That could be a situation where you would need to then purchase and enable those features, purchase or enable those. So there is some of those radios are out of service at this point, right? So there's no way to get those features, but there's people out there that do some tools to enable those features because Motorola or whoever sell it or make it available to anybody anymore. So because of that, a lot of those older end-of-life radios will be able to have those features enabled at no cost. But it does require no ones are available, which ones would cost, which ones might need it. It's not in the that you would just kind of want to jump in and be like, oh, I saw a radio. Like even when I buy radios still, I've got like the 20 questions going, trying to figure out all the things about it to make sure I'm going to do what I want it to do also.
All right, I got two more questions. I keep coming up with more questions. Brian W1BKW. Did somebody say P1 equipment can be upgraded to P2? Why is all this P1 equipment being replaced? P1 radio is using FDMA, and P2 equipment is using TDMA, which gives you more channels. So P1 equipment can't do that type of transmissions with the using more channels. So all these agencies want that, and they have to buy P2 equipment. It's kind of a mandate. That's what Chris said, that they have to buy that P2 equipment, so they're getting rid of their P1 equipment. So I think I have that right. So that's why they're getting rid of it, because that P1 equipment cannot have that feature. Although P2 equipment is backwards compatible, but I understand that. I think I got that correct. Any other comments? But let's see. And then my other comment before I forget, what do you need to program? Once I get a P25 radio, how do you program these things? So go ahead, Chris.
Before Chris jumps in, can I add to that, Bucky? W0KBZ.
Okay, let's get with Chris one more time for last transmission, and then I'll go over to Vale. Chris, you gotta leave, so one more time over to you, and then we'll let you. I think you have to go somewhere.
Yeah. That was a good question. Somebody said, yes, there is lots of phase one equipment. So some of really early P25 equipment was phase one only, and there was no software upgrade path to phase two, just because it was early equipment. And I say that like some of these radios from like, some of these phase one radios came out in like 1995. So we're a long time. We're like some of those radios are close to 30 years, or even 2007, 2008. Like these are older radios. So yeah, not go to phase two. But pretty much everything that's been done in almost the last since 2000, like 2010, 2012 is all been compliant. So almost the last 15 years, you can run phase two on it.
Okay, my last question was, how do you program? How do you what do you need to program these, and how do you get it? How do you get? Do you need Motorola software, and is it readily available?
W0KVZ. Similar question. I'm using the P25 Astro CPS software, but I'm not sure how. I've heard there are different versions of that particular programming software. Where would be the best place to obtain that? Is that through the Motorola Solutions shop, or is it available at other places that are reliable? Chris, thank you.
Yeah, so if you're using an Astro, like if it's an Astro, if it's like an XTS 3000 or XTS 5000, yes, there is Astro software. There's a number of people that just have it available. You can download. Um, if you want to email me, I can point you to a lot of those different places. But it is publicly available. Radios are long no longer supported at this point. So yeah, so that's there's lots of places for it, and then there's also tools out there, like I mentioned, that you could enable the different feeds. Doesn't have it available to you. But yeah, if you wanted to email me and what you've got, I'd be glad to help you get software and things so that you can program those and get those working for you.
Roger that. I appreciate that a great deal. We'll get your email from the web page, I assume, and your QRZ page, and we'll send you off one, because that's where I've been stuck. And I appreciate it. It was good and informative net tonight. Thank you.
All right. Hey, thank you, Val. Good comments, everybody. Good questions. And thank you, Paul. And mostly, thank you, Chris, for helping out tonight. And